see you.
I'm a mushroom.
Oh, really? Not me. I'm a poplar.
Do you know what a mushroom is?
Yes.
Keep me in the dark and
Don't tell me anything.
dig you shit.
Mm-hmm. It's not that, it's black dirt.
It's fertile dirt.
How's the head doing?
Chuck said, if you want to get that field up in January, the cows were off in January.
Yeah.
The scalping didn't completely take everything.
Because it was dormant.
It's really, really sensitive
So
still.
what
Oh, I
kind
bet it is.
That's kind of their
Well, I
idea.
just bet
If you want to.
Yeah, same
They're not
here.
in there till way after season, you know, hunting season, and then they're.
Oh, I can see that.
And then they can walk across there. Well, deer and elk can too. And they,
Good.
Good. Wayne, how about
deer
you?
and elk can.
No
Good.
Nicole,
Just like
Not very
cattle.
darn.
so I went to grab
And drink
Debbie.
out of the water.
And Chuck said
Well,
Debbie's.
they used to have the cows on it,
So,
just to make that
well,
little
maybe-
store,
Bernadette, do you have the quiet claim for him?
to make it healthy.
I do have a copy of it.
Yeah, I have a copy here too, Mike, if you want to look at it.
All right, but we still wanna have Nicole here for that.
We do,
Yeah.
but, so we might have to put Debbie in there first.
Let me see if I can call Wes today and see if I can, I'm sure they're busy too, with lots of water.
Do you need another copy?
Do you have a COS for today then?
No.
You're just here for that deed?
I'm just here for, yeah, to see what's said on that.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Oh, she says it's not her, it's Bernadette that'll be handling this.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Sure.
Just says not me, Bernadette.
Okay.
Call the meeting over right
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we do an open meeting with public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes, Tim?
Yesterday, after the meeting closed, we talked a little bit about the legislative process and a couple of bills that are going through that are definitely concerned to Broadwater County. And I went in yesterday afternoon and I did get a chance to talk with our representative, Julie Dooling, and she advised me that she had voted in the third reading yesterday on the bill of concern that we talked about. She voted no on that yesterday. So look, we kind of got a gain there. In other conversations on different bills that are affecting Broadwater County, one of them that come up, and I'm going to have to be honest and say I forget the bill number, but it had to do with the public defender side of things between Crime Control Board and, or not the Crime Control Board, but the Department of Corrections and the Department of Justice. It's a pretty volatile bill at local government levels, and when doing some research on where that bill stands, we come across another situation that we just would like to have an answer on. We were told that according to the Office of Crime Control Board, Commissioner Overt was removed from the chair position of the Crime Control Board, and Peter Oman, who is a public defender, has been put into that position. And so we're just kind of wondering if Commissioner Overt would, because it's been so involved with our local government here, if you have a statement for the people on what's going on, if you're still a member of the Crime Control Board, because it's happened this week. So it's news, and we're trying to make sure that we know what's going on instead of going with the rumors that sometimes start.
And I absolutely resent your use of the word removed. This is something that is going on with a number of boards. Right now, the governor is in his last 2 years, and what he is doing is shuffling a number of boards. Board of Crime Control is one, there's a whole host of them. Yes, I am no longer the chair. My term is done in 2 years at the same time as the governor's. Peter Ullman has a 4-year term that just started in January. His term as chair and on the board will go forward past the governor's term by a good 2 years. Mine would have ended with the governor. So it is a very good strategic move on the
Okay.
governor's part.
We're just
As
wondering
far
what's going
as
on.
my sitting on that board, I am absolutely still a member.
Okay,
And I absolutely 100% support the governor and his choice in making this determination.
all right,
So,
thank you for your
and the
statement.
Board of
and-
Crime Control continues to be a very important board for not only Broadwater County, but all local government, cities and counties both.
And that's why I'm asking, because sometimes it does need clarification, Commissioner, and that's why we continue to ask the question.
And
so we
asking the
appreciate your
question
statement.
is absolutely fine. Leading the question is creating news, not reporting it.
Well, opinions are what sometimes happen, so thank you for your opinion.
Any other public comment? Okay, we will move to the Hyman Big Sky Drive quiet claim deed. Bernadette?
That's a quitclaim deed for the portion of Big Sky Drive that was abandoned and voted on. Through the process of the 380 Views subdivision. So it's been abandoned. and
Right, I
so-
remember that, so this is just kind of makes this a little cleaner.
Right, what it
Right,
does is,
yeah.
because the county still owns the ground.
Right.
And so what this did, and the deed clarifies that it's not a parcel of any kind, it's to be annexed to that subdivision.
Right.
But it's a quitclaim deed, which basically says if the county has claim to it, they quit claim it, which, so
Right.
it's not a warranty deed.
Right. Well, I mean, that's good, because that just eliminates any type of liability that we would ever have in the
Right,
future.
no liability, no ownership
Right, right.
of just that portion that they wrote, the note that they.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think everybody knew the direction that was going, right?
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. So this just makes it formal, for, if you guys sign it, then it would be filed at the time the subdivision plat is all filed all together
Mhm.
with all the subdivision documents.
Right, okay.
And I would, redo the boundary to include that on that lot P5.
Okay. Or were they gonna split it between the two lots, or were they?
No, it's all
Oh,
going
that's
to
right,
the
it's going
north,
to the
yeah.
one, to that one
Mhm.
at the north, that's right.
That they'll, use it as a driveway off
A
of
driveway.
Spring Street.
Yeah,
Yes.
gotcha, that's right,
So
okay,
they'll construct their driveway on it.
okay.
So is there a motion to approve this quitclaim deed or any other discussion?
No, it's just,
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the quitclaim deed for the Heinemans.
Is there a second?
absolutely, I'll second it, just clarifies.
Motion made and second to approve the quitclaim for the Heinemans, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same, motion carries.
And then Miss Ann, will you notarize that?
Yes. Getting the cart before the horse, but that's okay.
Would it be best, I'll just leave it with you?
Yes, please.
All right, and then I will just pick that up,
Okay.
or when we bring all the subdivision documents.
Next time you can pick it up and put it with the other subdivision documents, we'll have it.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Is Debbie still here?
Yes, she's just behind the post.
Okay, we'll go on to the Debbie Kelly, Finance Officer, 19 quarter 3 budget review.
Morning, Debbie.
Quick, before we get into that. This was brought down to us by the county attorney last night. The interlope, I believe it's stuff with Doc Campbell and the contract
Oh,
and all that. So it's as, what's there is what he gave us. Left it with us last night, and Michelle's not here this morning, so I'm bringing it down, so it's not my responsibility.
We already went through and agreed to sign this, right?
Mhm. I bet that has his
it has
signature.
his signature.
for our records.
Yeah.
And just so you know, as I go through the review,
Thank
you'll have the
you.
same copies that I'm looking at. Pretty much in a nutshell, as of the end of March, we should be at or below 75% spending. If we're over, there's a few that are over. Some of them are because they're a once a year thing. So just gonna kind of quick go through some of those. So revenue or expenditure first, which do you prefer?
I would say expenditures first. But I'm negotiable.
So what I tried to do is just concentrate on, after I got the budget amendment posted and made sure line items had the right spending authority, the next thing I went and did is to see, make sure we're at or below 75%. Some of us are a little bit over, so we'll have to look at those a little more in detail. And there's some that are way under. Well, the first one is the Commissioner's Fund. It's at 82% spending. There are some line items that have gone over a little bit. Not sure the needs, utilities being one of them.
I think we knew at the beginning of the year with some of the dynamics that this was gonna
Yeah.
need some attention, and I think it certainly will. This is kind of the catch-all.
And then the other lesser ones are printing and duplicating, postage, and operating supplies. Question I had on that one, we just had the mass mailing. Is that something that the commissioners pay for out of their budget for that permit mailings with the newsletter? Okay,
Yeah,
so that would probably be why that one went over.
yeah.
Okay. Justice Court's looking good, they're at 75%. Finance Office is at 52%, only because there's a couple of line items that are still out there, we haven't touched yet, professional services, in case the audit part goes over, which it did by $493. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Every year with audit, we budget for their main contract, but any add-ons that they don't send and add to, and there was a lot more discussion this year, emails. They had Kim help, and she's not in Montana anymore, she's in Iowa. So there was like email, phone calls, so it took a little more coordination, so it cost a little more. Because there wasn't as much, she was farther away and did more, so she cost more.
We won't have any more expenses than that though, will we?
Not for this fiscal year. We're done for this fiscal year. The other one, personnel line item, is over a little bit. It's at 80%. I'm not quite sure. She's a monthly stipend, so hers is probably right on cue. Then she gets the flat monthly amount.
And what's that for financial?
Personnel services, which is West staff.
Okay,
yeah. So while 75 is where we should be, hers is different, that one's, because it's monthly.
okay.
So that would be right where we're at. Pretty much, legal is over by a couple percent, but that's not too much. It's like a pay period, because they ran the report for April, and we'd already posted.
Will we have, going back just a second, will we have, much more in the elections budget with the city election, or are all those by acclamation?
I think
you know?
so far this year, they've all been by acclamation.
Right,
Chantel
and,
Chantel hasn't had
The
any to
city
do.
election will be a next year's budget if we're still
So that budget looks strong, that's good
Mhm.
for Doug's overall budget. Okay, thank you.
This is a new line item, I'm not sure. The central communications, we spent about 1,600 out of there. I don't remember why we set that one up.
Is that for Black Mountain? Phones or internet?
No, it had something to do with Mike Conkey,
Okay,
and I didn't get time to get some of these details down.
okay.
So that's just DES, huh?
I think it's something new with DES, and I didn't get a chance to get all the details on some of these. An area of concern is the public health budget. She's over in her operating supplies by 21,000, which has put her whole budget over by 5,000. And with the loss of WIC, a lot more of her services are being charged to the general fund, public health. So we'll have to kind of catch up with Teresa, or I will, to talk with her about how things are going, what's looking at with that one. And I don't know if it was extra costs with vaccines this year, or more, or both.
I do know a little bit about that. They've got a plan, so definitely you can touch base with Teresa on that, that's something they're working on. But, she cut her budget 2 years ago by 45%,
Way cut.
way cut, and I think that's part of this, is it was too deep a cut. So when you look at, averaging that 45% cut with these, overages, I think it still comes out to a negative, her spending less. But, she does have a plan, Debbie,
Okay,
so,
okay. I know that was a tough one, and she did cut one year, and but being new, I think she cut too much, like you said.
right, which
Which
is repairable. I
It,
mean,
it's fixable, it just, when you look at your numbers, looks are deceiving.
And she has been doing an awful lot of home visits with immunizations, that's a big piece of that,
And I think that's another one too that's over, or close to over.
yeah, yeah, but the service to our citizens
Mm-hmm.
has to be looked at too.
And then the Board of Health line item is over, and I think it's, we originally set this up for Janae, it was like 3 hours a month, between the meeting and doing minutes, so I think there's been more work done on this than we anticipated was being put into with Board of Health with Janaea.
Is that the,
'Cause most of it's-
440140?
Yes, 440140, yes. I don't know if there was she's putting more into it because the work is there, or quite what happened there, so we'll have to reevaluate that, because it's mostly the wages that are over. So we'll have to look at that.
She put in a lot of time with Julie on the campers and the silos issue.
Okay.
And with Three Brothers also.
Oh, and Three Brothers, yeah. Yeah, she did a lot of work on that,
Okay, so there was extra, so that could be possible future amendment
sure.
to, look at revenues and make sure how we're gonna allocate some of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Environmental health is pretty good. There's a new line item that came across, professional services, so that'll have to be added to an amendment for $6,271 that I didn't have in my last amendment.
Okay.
But overall, the general fund is at 73% spending. So they're 2% under the 75%, which is good as a collective whole.
Okay, good.
We're so as long as we keep that up and don't get to the end of the year and say, oh, it's end of the year, let's go spend. We'll be okay.
Right, and with what we did a couple years ago to get rid of the use it or lose it, I think that'll, I know that this is more of a family account, but that should keep that from happening.
I'm sure
We'll need to keep tabs on that and watch closely.
And then the road fund, they're at 60%, so they're doing good despite everything. And that includes, there's a new line item in there for $4,500 that wasn't in our previous amendment that we'll have to give spending authority to. But I think they've got the cash in their budget to cover that, but at 60% for the fund, they're doing good. Weed, they're at 82%, or let's see, 59%, so weed's doing good as well. Between Mary and the grants, Jessica's been working with us and we're educating a little bit more. So she's better aware of how all that grant work ties into things and where she's concerned with weed. Done really good. And the predatory animal and sheep, it's based on stuff that the Board of Livestock gives to us. So it's just like twice a year after taxes. So those are kind of hard to gauge at their percents. We've made the first year's half a payment, now we're just waiting for May taxes to do the second halves. And fair is cyclical, they're at 85%. The biggest is they went over on operating supplies this year. They spent $7,000 versus the $3,500 you budgeted. So I'm not sure on that one either where they are a little over their spending, but they're once a year. Hopefully they won't have any more till the next fiscal year. But she's doing pretty good too. I know she's working on getting sponsorships, so which will decrease what they spend. Airport, they're at 85%. They're a little over in their repair and maintenance, but I think that has to do with the runway and not getting quite close enough to the guests of the costs.
I have that meeting tomorrow night, I'll find out what's going on.
Okay.
I'll meet with the board.
Okay, and that'll be good too because, and I sent Diana an email, I'm gonna venture off a little bit here on the revenue side. We're supposed to get money from an interlocal agreement between the city, county, airport. We haven't gotten anything this year. So I don't know if there's something with that interlocal, somebody's forgotten because they had change of hands, it's missed. So I did send Diana an email on that and I included Mayor. See what's up, what's changed, because we budgeted money for it and so I'm not quite sure how that's handling, if the city's paying for things separately and not letting the county take care of it. I'm not sure. And Mr. Ferguson comes in and sometimes he doesn't know quite how to answer that either. Comes and gets the bills and does the claims, but I don't know if he's aware of the interlocal, how that worked when it was all set up.
Sure.
So.
And if you could let us know what Colleen and Mike have to say about that. Did we get the payment for the interlocal for the JP and the other interlocals?
Yeah, those have been going through okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, those have been going through okay. And that's where part of the budget amendment was to make some changes to that. There was part of the year that Corey did get some money before the city's attorney took over full-time. So he did have a few payments. The extra worked it out with them and it went into public safety. So their last payment, they lessened it by the $6,000 that they'd overpaid the county attorney. And we just took it from the attorney's account and put it into public safety.
That probably should, not probably, it should have been a commission decision. Not that we wouldn't have probably supported that.
City did it with their checks.
still should have been a commission
So to
decision.
balance it, Doug, that's
by
what Doug and
law.
I did,
Okay.
because they shorted it 6,000 to go to public safety. Because what they did is they took their check and cut it by that 6,000 that they had overpaid. So we had to, in order to meet the monthly city amount, take that 6,000 that was overpaid to Corey in his line item as interlocal and put it into the sheriff's line item to get the monthly payment to balance like they're supposed to, because the city, rather than give us the 6,000, they shorted it.
So the city owed us 6, start over again?
What they did is they owed us 19,000 a month for the public safety.
No,
They-
oh, it's per month, okay,
Yeah.
for public safety.
And what they did when they sent last March's interlocal agreement payment, rather than the 22,000 that goes and divvies up to all three, they subtracted $6,000 from their check, which shorted public safety, because we had it over between July and now. So they cut that payment. So in order for public safety to have their full monthly payment, we had to take it away out of the general fund, since it was paid to the general fund in error, and put it into the public safety fund.
And it was paid to the public, or to the general fund in error, how?
Because they were paying it, and they shouldn't have been. Communication on their part,
Okay, so they overpaid for JP?
no,
And county
just the county
attorney?
attorney.
Just the
Just
county
the county
attorney?
attorney,
Okay, all right,
yeah.
I understand.
So when we get to revenue, that's another one you're gonna see a discrepancy in, that we'll have to do a JV to reduce, or a budget amendment to reduce the revenue that we're not gonna get, because we budgeted for a whole year.
Right, because we didn't know. All right.
And then once they got
We can talk about that there too, because I'll have some more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's
Thank
what
you.
they did on their end, and Doug come over, how are we supposed to do this? So between the two of us, he receipted and did the A101 with the money, the actual check that came, and then I took the journal, the second half, to finish that step.
Okay,
That's what
Thank you.
happened. Complicated. It would have been easier if they'd have paid and we could have refunded them or something.
Mhm.
But
And did we pull that back out of, the county attorney? That
Yes.
$6,000?
yeah, it was taken out of, which is the general fund, so it was taken out of that particular line item, which will show in
Okay, I got it.
revenue reports.
okay.
But back to the airport one, we haven't had any for this year, so I'm not sure what's going on. And I
Let us
did,
know if you would.
so I'm hoping Diana will either call or send me an email back.
Yeah, I'm
I might
looking
have to call her.
I'm looking at the airport budget, and I'm just wondering if there's a miscoding there on something that they submitted. You know, because they do have a bunch of money there in contracted services that,
Well, and here's where Mike,
but we'll find out, I'll ask him.
yeah, I have to work with him and really, and he trusts what we're doing.
Mhm.
So I think some of the repairs out there cost a little more than they
And that's
anticipated,
possible.
is what happened.
Could be.
And of course, we don't usually know, it comes in, turns in claims, and we don't hear, the communication doesn't happen as well as it could,
Right.
or has in the
I-
past.
I understand you,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, got it.
But overall, the airport, it's at 83%, but that includes the Canyon Ferry one too, anything that they do out there.
Right.
And then district court, doing good. She's at 72%, so it's under the 75. And she hasn't had any of their psychiatric services that they've likely had last year. So she hasn't had a need to touch any of that, so that's a good thing for her. And of course, our comprehensive insurance is a once-a-year payment. And last year with mosquito, even with all the spraying and things we did, are pretty good. Now, coming into the new year, that will change up until June. But that's why they went over in their operating supplies, because they did a lot more spraying, so they need a lot more chemicals. But despite that line item being over, they're done really good. not a whole lot in salary and wages, because we had existing people do it. Or contracted it out. Library's right at 75%. And planning is doing good overall. 67% spending. Extension, she's doing good. She's at 71%. Nothing jumps out there. And all the different accounts with public safety, they're looking overall really well. Brandon's done really good this year. So overall, the public safety fund is at 74%. So they're right on target, despite all some of the different accounts that they were worried about. He comes over and we fix it and take care of it. They do have that new inmate morale and welfare that Brandon came after Bob was here when they did our audit. And instead of waiting till next year to set that line up, Brandon just felt it would be easier for them if we could set it up now. So I did, so we'll have to add that as an amendment to give it spending authority.
Right.
I think there's line items in the actual detention account that duplicate that. What did I see? That inmate services, care and custody of prisoners. That I had questions about that they had their inmate welfare and commissary. Oh, I saw that before.
Well, some of these look really good.
Yeah, this is better than some of the years past.
Yeah.
And, you know, and some of their individual accounts are over, and a lot of it has to do with the overtime, shorting, staff shorting, trainings. They end up going into more, puts them in more overtime, which then an overtime rate increases the work comp, the unemployment liability, and puts those lines out of whack for the budget. But it's one of those things you can't help, and we went through it with a fine-tooth comb last year, and still here again, we missed the mark.
Well, I wouldn't say you missed the mark at all.
Well, if you're looking to do years past, yeah, but when you go over, everything, it's gonna kick other things out.
That's true,
And you
but-
can't anticipate that.
But when you're telling us we need to be at about 75%, and we're talking about 78%
Yeah.
for public safety general and control and dispatch at 80%, and that's the high, that is not,
I see, and they're
that is
right,
not
overall fund,
insurmountable
they're
going forward.
right on target, so,
yeah.
doing like they do, look at the little lines they get worried about. But you see that through that microscope and you're gonna see things you don't wanna see, so. But that new inmate and welfare, is where some of those two extra accounts that they had, that they opened up and gave Doug control to spend over, that's what that one was set up for. And that was at the auditor's request. And we just did it this year instead of next year. I don't have a problem with it. If it helps Brandon and them, it doesn't bother me.
Did Wynn mention to you that the juvenile probation was likely going to be paid by the state, or at least they said they would, even though they haven't
When
paid
we
yet?
were in here yesterday, when I was doing the budget
Okay.
amendment and reading it off,
Okay,
yeah. And Brooke chimed in and said it's through probably Idaho, because he wasn't sure which out of state. And she said Idaho. So
okay.
hopefully that will help that one. Museum's at 70%, which is par for the course. So they open up again here in May. That'll go up to where it's supposed to be when she gets her second person hired. Vicki decided she wanted the more stability to work at the library. So she's not coming back this year. So Linda has to find somebody else. And then the health insurance funds. This is a group health, and the permissive is a balancing act. I have to switch between the two funds in one pay period. It didn't get switched. I was off by a pay period from one to the other. So at the end of the year, I'll have to look at that one. Cause that 32,000 is basically one pay period's employer contributions for everybody. Wish there was another way we'd do it, but there's not. And then search and rescue, I think because they bought their boat and other equipment, they've pretty much spent their money for the year. They're at 98% for their overall fund. And there's that 8,400 for machinery equipment. I'm pretty sure between the boat and didn't they get a truck to help pull the boats and the four-wheelers and all their equipment for searches. So that line item is over, so that will need an amendment towards the end of the year. Make sure they got the revenue to cover it.
Any worries with them being at 97% at this point?
No, unless, I think the year for search, for most part, searches, they had the one at the lake, when they helped with the drifting and the antelope and the people went
They have
out.
the airplane.
And then the airplane, that's all been reported, so for the volunteers and things, I don't see anything more unless we get some major rain and flood or something, or somebody goes and gets lost. I think they're pretty well done for the year.
Okay,
If they don't need a search, they don't have money, they don't spend money. And Wynn's usually pretty good at working, if something comes up, coming down and talking to me about it.
going back to the health insurances, if you combine the two right now, we've only spent 71, so I think that's
Yeah.
notable.
Which is where we
for the
should be,
overall.
yeah,
Right,
give or take with,
and we pay forward, don't we, a month?
yeah.
So,
So where we're at now is paid months, so that's why I say wait until the end of the year when we balance, when we get the rest of our second half of taxes.
right, that's good news though.
It's always, trying to split between the two doesn't always, if I don't remember to change it, it creates this problem. One period off. And so far in employee safety, we haven't spent anything out of that, but we're getting the program up and going, so there might be some changes to that. Record preservation, 25%, we're doing really good.
Yep.
Bars, oh, backtrack to the bars litigation, we're at 80% of things that have been submitted and processed as of April. So it's not doing too bad. We didn't spend 100% yet, so that's good. And then the alcohol rehab, 2,800. When we did the budget last year, we weren't sure what we were gonna get for the payment from Rocky Mountain to spend on this that goes to, Southwest, yes,
Dependency?
yes. So that, towards the end of the year, I'll have to, until I make sure we're not getting any more money to send to Judy. They have they come at the end of the year with a final, like a fifth payment. And so we're behind a month, so that's why this is over, cause it's
Okay.
picking up that fifth payment that we don't know we have to pay until after the budget's done. The way this Rocky Mountain and how they do that.
So bottom line is this will balance out.
Mhm.
Okay,
But that could have a possible amendment at the end of the year to adjust for that.
okay,
DUI, they've done pretty good, even with their football game and that 49%, they did really good with their spending and funds and prizes, they didn't go overboard. The gas appropriation tax is the one I'm gonna have to talk with Mary on. When we did this, she didn't know what the actual amount for the year was gonna be. This year we actually got closer to the 64, which is what she spent. So we'll have to amend that at the end of the year, but tell her she can't spend any more out of that.
and we have.
Unless we have the excess revenue in there to cover it, which sometimes happens with Dana, he didn't always spend it.
Okay,
Yeah, but she didn't know and couldn't find it, and this was the year before's amount.
okay,
Because I saw it out there yesterday when I was looking, how did I miss that? And it wasn't out yet, so. That one looks like we're over. We haven't spent anything on the new gas tax. But I'm not sure if we've designated what, I know there was a report I had to submit, says what you wanted to spend it on. So I'm not positive that if some of that was spent but just charged to the wrong account or in the wrong fund. I gotta check with Mary on that, and of course, trying to catch up with her, she's always busy. Cause isn't there a resolution that we're gonna say, like mag chloride for a road or something like one of the creek roads? Just off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember, there was something, Cottonwood Road and that was gonna be used, that you had to request it for, you have to designate what you're gonna spend it for. So, I gotta check with Mary and make sure if they have done some of that work, if we've paid it under the wrong fund,
Okay,
which is why we haven't spent anything.
okay. And then for the new amount we got this year, we'll have to do the same process
Yeah.
again,
Right.
resolution, public hearing.
Cause I know we talked about it here a couple months ago, when she was explaining all this, how it worked. And then she was wishing she could make it a little more general, which I think she's gonna do this next time, so she's not tied to,
Right.
cause we went and looked at other
We did,
submissions,
yeah, and they can be a little bit more
yeah.
flexible.
Cause she thought there was some things like within this, closer to the city, roads to fill, she had some ideas, so, just so we know on that one, we don't wanna lose it, or have another fund be charged for something that this could cover. Especially road, if they get a certain amount of mills, I don't wanna take away from them if that's what this program will cover, so. She's still learning, we're still working on it. Junk vehicle, that one account, needs to be the 830, the 430830, so I got that pulled to do a journal to put it back into the 430830. Sometimes these claims, this is where, when we get claims, sometimes Michelle gets stuck because when you're in it, putting it in, it doesn't look right, but without getting out and finding the right code, it doesn't always. So that's where journals come through, and that's where this comes in to fix it. So that will be a journal to put it back into the 230 on the other accounts, which is at 75%, so we're okay.
Okay.
And that's for the junk vehicle, so, Michelle was even looking at, maybe we need to put an ad in the paper and say we have a trailer and stuff now and the program is going. Call us if you need it towed, rather than,
I would suggest the BCDC listserv, again, it goes out to 400-ish people. And those are the folks that belong in a lot of the different groups that can help spread the word.
cause I know she had to put in, with DEQ, she has to report all the lines that she's gonna spend it on, so I heard her talking about that yesterday. Thinking maybe we needed to do that, but that could change. And then the weed grant, Jessica's getting stuff and getting going on it, just getting ready or collecting the back revenues or money to cover these expenses that have already been done. She's getting good at, once they're done, collecting that revenue, so. She's working on that and getting better at it, but so far that account's pretty simple this year. 911 is at 80%. But I also know when looking at the revenues, looks like we're short a little bit. And I know talking with Wynn last year, trying to get 911 to specify an amount that they were gonna send us was hard. So we're trying to watch the spending in the 911, even though it's at 80%. When their system crashed, they had to have something, so.
I think that's where a lot of that came from. We
Yeah.
had to go up to that generator site a couple of times to fix that and.
Yeah,
And,
that's where that 11,000 over in their repair and maintenance line,
Right.
yeah. So we'll just have to watch that until we know we got all our 911 revenue and possibly do an amendment between the two to have that extra revenue to make sure it's gonna cover. Hopefully, but yeah, I don't know, last year they just never had anything. They usually are pretty good at, here's what we're gonna send you for all the different 911 services, and both Wynn and I never heard, kept waiting, so we kinda went with what the previous year's spending was. Hoping we were getting something. The next one is your guys' little PILT account, 95%. But I think all the transfers and expenditures that you needed to do for the year are done, so I don't anticipate much more of that being spent this year. Only you guys will know that. And then the victim witness grant, she's at 75%. Bioterrorism is pushing its limits. And I've talked to Teresa. She's at 98% and she's over on her wages and things. So that's part of having to talk with her. We'll have to discuss that one.
And I think part of being new too, she's juggling at least 4 grants, plus the general fund.
And losing WIC, so those, well, not losing it, but not doing that program anymore. What was budgeted to charge that program, she's been doing elsewhere. So I know we're gonna have to do budget amendments to offset what wasn't used into these other accounts so that it doesn't show they've overspent.
And I think beyond that too, I mean, yeah, we lost the money for WIC, we also are not putting in the
Just effort,
money
yeah.
that WIC costs.
Yeah.
So that should even out. But what I'm kind of getting at is I think we need a strategy
Yeah.
between you and her, your understanding and her being new of
Yeah.
where does money need to get spent, where does it need to be budgeted, and where are we short? And what is the plan moving forward?
Mhm. And I know she's working hard on her billables and
Yeah.
her deliverables, that she calls them, to help with that. So she's doing better, but here's another year where it's kind of trying to find that happy medium again.
And I think it's worth noting too, and for the minutes, that the hospital is picking up the WIC program.
Oh,
Yeah, so we still have it in town, just not being done by public health.
oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Oh.
so great partnership there.
Oh, that's good. Well, okay, that's good to know. So there's some work, and I know there's like last year, at the end of the year, I had to work with her a little bit to iron out some of these things while she gets these programs and tries to get it going for herself with
Yeah.
where she's and her staff. So staffing changes are always hard. Can set things back. Just upsets the apple crate.
What's MCH stand for?
Maternal child health. So this is part of the other issue that she has, is there's overlap between immunization, the WIC. There was overlaps in what each one does, similarities. How do you allot your time? Which fund do you charge? So that one's doing pretty good. She's
Some
only at
opportunity
62%.
to balance.
So that's where some of that balance, you know, and immunization there too, right about 77%. So it's just some of those just need to go through and rebalance everything. And she didn't anticipate Shanti leaving, and she got Diane back, so. Home health, she's at 81%, but there again, for Geraldine, it seems like they keep adding clients every year. They add more clients than we get the previous year, which takes more time. So she's at 81%.
She's asked for an increase in that grant this year.
Yeah,
We have our meeting, Vic and I serve on that board on the 9th of May, I think. And so I'm hopeful, but we'll see.
yeah.
It all depends on how much we get in.
So that one's another, how do you judge? You just don't. And the next year, you might have hardly any clients and not have any care. Then what do? You know?
Well, and with an aging community, it's hard to say no to somebody who's in need.
Yeah,
You just, you can't do it.
and Teresa
Sometimes.
won't.
Right.
Teresa won't. So, it's like their farmer's market idea to help them, you know. They're looking out for them and coming up with things to help them, so she won't let that happen. Immunization, I think we're pretty much done for the year, but they're at 77%. I'm outside of, I think, of some billing and things. And of course, our Deep Creek. I know we're still going and it's supposed to be closed, so there'll have to be an amendment at the end of the year for that one. Because it shows we overspent, well, didn't, little things keep popping up to charge before we get it closed out. So that's gonna need to change. And then the building, we didn't budget enough for the search and rescue building. So we might have to watch that because I know they're not quite done. I'll have to add to that so that they don't go over and make sure that they've got revenues in their CIP fund to cover it.
Is this being balanced with the grant money from the trust board?
Not so far. This is just work that's been done. And I know the grant made some donations, but they haven't done more work out there again either. I didn't have any volunteer hours for work on the building this quarter.
Okay, we'll just need to track that
So
to
it'll
make
have to
sure
be
that
tracked
there's
and-
no overage,
Yeah.
it just balances out. If it's not going to, then we need a plan.
Because I know the trust board was very specific when they want it done by, or they needed it done by the terms of their lending money. And I think it's by the end of the fiscal year is up, so maybe the weather's getting nicer, they'll get it done.
Right, yeah, the last couple of months have been impossible.
But they were off to a slow start too. It's just, road CIP is still doing good, they haven't spent any, but that has, some of that will change when we do some final
Yeah,
for auditor recommendations to cover some of the work they've done on the Deep Creek and Dry Creek accounts. And then solid waste, our favorite one we've been working on. Amazingly, so far overall is only at 71% of spending.
awesome.
So that's really good, despite. I'm looking into the one with the health insurance. When Mike and Eric do work for them, it's hitting this particular account, the 5130333, and it should be hitting the health insurance under the actual solid waste, which is on the other page, the 430810 and object 146, because they're a proprietary account. I have to go call Black Mountain and look at the setup, because it's something in the setup and how the defaults for the solid waste are set up. And I never had to worry about that before because there was never an issue of it being other departments splitting their time. It's just all solid waste or none. So I have to go check into that.
Okay,
But it should be in there, so it's between that one and that account and this account, we should be right on target with what we're supposed to spend. Or what solid waste is supposed to pay for it. It just doesn't have any spending authority and sticks out on that line item,
well, 71%, that's the bottom line, that's excellent.
yeah. And then silos, there's a line item that did get, the utility, I think it's the utility. Needs some budget authority.
Okay,
Repair, actually it's repair and maintenance. So I have to give that came in. So that has put her over budget by 1,000. So we'll have to look at that one, look at the revenues, make sure we're getting revenue we're supposed to. I know last year we kinda talked about the fees she can charge. I don't know if we ever got around to it or if we were able to reach her and talk with her and change that. So that's another one we'll have to look at again this year.
Yep.
To make sure we get things budgeted right.
Yeah, and there's part of the revenue, we get a revenue check at the end of the year, but what's difficult is some of the camping months are before June 30th. So, there's kind of a strange overlap.
And the boat docks too, depending on the weather and the ice and the, you know, because wants to go put their boats in the water and temperatures being conducive to that.
And didn't she mention the other day when she here that she is planning to raise the dock fees on $2,
Camping fees.
or camping fees, that was what?
Yeah, BOR doesn't know if they're gonna allow that.
Okay.
And we're gonna have, that'll be part of our follow-up meeting with them. They think there needs to be a 9-month process
Oh, okay.
to do that. That was not something discussed last year, so we're gonna have to get to the bottom of that. But, you know, it's, the other campgrounds are considerably higher, so we can
Right.
investigate that.
Yeah. So I know like all the work they've done at Goose Bay, it's amazing out there. You pay for it. Why Silos is nice too.
It would
It's
be nice
flat
if there was a
and-
little equity, you know, put a lot of money in one side and some in the other, but it was really 100%, 0%, and that's
Mhm.
just not,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this side of the lake, I want to be in the sun all day. I don't want to be shadowed by the mountains, so
Right?
I prefer here, but. And then the trust board I included, to kind of show, because they were in part of the amendments with their grants and their donations and things that they've spent money on. The professional services that Debbie charged, they've had her do some more work this year than in the past, so that line item went up, but usually you don't see too much from them. I don't know if we'll see much more. So we might have to touch that one. But adding all the funds together, we're at 74%.
And we're supposed to be at 85?
75, in
75.
theory.
Okay, so we're right on target.
So we're pretty much right on target.
All right, good. So my question is, and this is just going back to memory last year, I remember you guys, when you set up your budgets, that you required all the departments to have a 10% reserve, is that right?
Did we impose that last year, or was it the follow-up of the previous year? I think when we started the budget, the year before, we had said we require you all to
It
save
was the year
10%.
before.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was part of the discussion, but I don't think it was a requirement imposed this past year,
Okay.
because everything was frozen anyway.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
I forgot to.
We did in April ask for a 2% reduction in operations from everybody. And I think that did follow through. And then it kind of fell aside when we realized we couldn't give COLA and just,
Right.
that we're just freezing because of the centrally assessed issue.
Right, and if I remember right, the way that you guys had thought about doing it was that would be set aside and they'd have to have authority from the commission to spend that 10% if they needed it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they would, so that we start building that reserve.